Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Adrienne Arsht, Executive Vice Chair of the Atlantic Council and founder of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center and Adrienne Arsht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center. I'd like to welcome everyone to this special edition of Atlantic Council Front Page. It's our premier event for live platform for global leaders to discuss the defining challenges of our time. Today, it's a real honor and a special pleasure to have, shall I say, my friend, General Laura Richardson with us again. My connection to Southcom in Miami makes today's discussion particularly meaningful to me. In the next few minutes, we will hear from some of the most critical security challenges and opportunities within Latin America and the Caribbean, along with Southcom's pivotal role in fostering regional security and economic prosperity. Strengthening our ties with nations in Latin America and the Caribbean is crucial for the economic well-being and safety of the United States, despite perceptions of diminishing engagement by the U.S. in these areas. Through the efforts of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center, we aim to bring the significance of this hemisphere to your attention, not just to the United States, but to the global stage. With the global landscape evolving, including heightened geostrategic rivalry with nations such as China and Russia, it's imperative for the United States to devise innovative strategies to rejuvenate its alliances with Latin America and the Caribbean, to mitigate adverse influences, as shown in two recent strategy papers published by the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security and the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center. We combine our interests. It's not isolated or siloed. General Richardson made history in October 2021 by becoming the first woman to lead Southcom and the second woman to achieve the rank of general in the U.S. Army, with a distinguished career across Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. Previously, she was general of the U.S. Army North, bringing extensive military insight and experience in the Western Hemisphere, a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, among other talents. We're delighted to have you here with us today. And to moderate today's conversation, I would like to introduce the Atlantic Council alum, Alex Ward, a national security reporter at Politico. He's known for his analysis of the White House's impact on U.S. foreign policy and the influential figures in Washington shaping our national security policy. He has received many accolades, and he was part of the Politico team that was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. Clearly, we're going to have a very stimulating discussion. So, Alex, please take it.
Well, thanks so much, Adrienne. I know, being an Atlantic Council alum, how much you matter to this place and, of course, on these issues, so pleasure to have you here. General, thanks for doing this. This will be a lot more. I hope this is more fun than a congressional hearing for you. Although I will try to go through as many newsy topics as I can. But first, if I may, to start off, most of these conversations tend to focus on what Latin America is doing to keep China at bay, or what we're working with our partners there to keep China at bay, or how to stop Russian influence in the region. So one thing I'd love for you to just kind of touch on to start is what our partners in Latin America actually do in terms of collaborating with us on security policy in our own military work. What is it beyond those sort of two general frames that they offer to us?
So in terms of our Latin American partners, well, first of all, let me thank Adrienne and the Latin American Center and the Atlantic Council for the work that they do day in and day out. So Adrienne, thank you so much for what you do and what the team does here at the Latin American Center. Alex, thank you very much for the question. This region is just fantastic. And our partners, 28 like-minded democracies that we work with. and the contingency planning, the military operations, force protection, humanitarian assistance, disaster response, all the things that we do and provide from Southcom, working with our partner nations and helping our partner nations counter malign activity, transnational organized crime, and all of those things, just working very closely together. And it's like-minded democracies based in human rights, the rule of law, and the professionalization of military forces and their public security forces. And so trying to assist with those challenges that they have, meeting our partners where they are. We're all in the same hemisphere. We're all from the Americas. And so being good neighbors, and that's what it's all about.
Okay. Well, I did make fun of Congress a second ago, but you did give great testimony last week, and I commend, it's about a 43-page statement about your thoughts on where the region is, and I've read it in this past week preparing, and I highly recommend you all do. And because that is available in the public domain, I figured we'll ask some newsier questions today, if that's all right. So let's start with, you definitely didn't expect this, Haiti. Tell me, there's reports out there about a possible plan to house Haitian refugees in Guantanamo. Is that plan something you're already discussing now? Is that, I know Guantanamo's been used to house Haitian refugees before. Is there enough capacity for what you might be expecting to come out of that crisis?
And so certainly U.S. Southcom has a wide range of contingency plans that we're responsible for maintaining and keeping up to date. And so in terms of a mass migration or possible mass migration, we're always prepared for that. And certainly the terrain walk that we did last summer on Naval Station Guantanamo Bay to make sure that we are ready for that. There are a lot of challenges that we see that are very close to our homeland, and we want to be able to do exactly what's right and humane and be able to take care of take care of populations that are trying to escape the crises that are happening in their country.
I get that you're prepared for it, but are you foreseeing a mass migration from Haiti that you'll need to house refugees in Guantanamo?
I think that what we're seeing now, we're seeing a lot of challenges in Haiti. We're seeing challenges in Cuba, and certainly we want to be prepared to be able to respond to that and be able to do that in an orderly way.
So prepared, but not seeing anything yet?
Well, I think that we are seeing indicators and warnings of things that could possibly go either direction. And so having plans that are ready to go is what we do. And so we're prepared for that.
And none of that preparation, I'm assuming, is U.S. boots on the ground in Haiti or anything like that?
No, not right now.
Not right now. So that's still on the table, potentially?
As the military always continues to plan and be ready for any possible situation, certainly what's happening in Haiti is disappointing and it's very concerning. And so with U.S. Southcom and what we are prepared to do, we want to make sure that we take care of our responses are humane in this crisis that's currently happening. Certainly our Department of State and the diplomatic negotiations and solutions that they're working with other governments in the Caribbean and in the international community and with the UN, we hope that those will absolutely be successful at the end of the day.
But as someone who's, of course, planning and advises the highest levels, do you see any utility in having U.S. forces in Haiti, or do you think that would be not as helpful as a solution?
I don't think I think an international solution, a solution that also includes the Haiti perspective is very important. And so I don't think a U.S.-only solution is where we need to be going. And certainly with the work that our great State Department is taking care of and doing right now is trying to do exactly that, to work an international solution.
But U.S. forces could be part of that international solution?
They could be at the end of the day. We wouldn't discount that at any time if, certainly what's happening as we see in the news and what is happening to that country. And so we are prepared if called upon by our State Department and by our Department of Defense.
Okay. We'll move on. I only have about 20 minutes to go through the region with you, so we'll move on. But I'm wondering, I've read, of course, we've all seen the reports of Venezuelan forces on Guyana's border. We haven't heard much since. Have you seen any movement, any indication that the Venezuelans are actually going to move deeper in to that region of Guyana?
I think that just in terms of the interaction that's taken place between Venezuela and Guyana, certainly Guyana, a very good partner and a strong democracy. And what we see President Maduro doing with elections that are now scheduled for the 28th of July, trying to create a state of emergency and possibly being able to stay in power. And continuing on with that humanitarian crisis that's currently happening and has been happening in Venezuela. And with 7.5 million people out of Venezuela that have poured out of that country to try and find a better life, try to find food and health care, we see that incredible, unprecedented human migration numbers in our region, and a large part due to what's happening in Venezuela. So in terms of what's happening with Venezuela and Guyana, we support Guyana and discount the Essequibo, the dispute that Venezuela has with the Essequibo region, and support Guyana and that democracy.
And so no indication of sort of an imminent military front there from the Venezuelans?
No, not that we think is credible.
Not that they think is credible. I know that we're helping to train, the Guyana asked us to help train and boost up their defenses. Is that something that can be done in time ahead of I know you said it's not credible or imminent, but ahead of time?
We continue all of our activities, our operations activities and investments with Guyana. That's very important. We haven't stopped anything with Guyana. Guyana has a lot of international support, and we have a lot of our allies that also work with Guyana. And so I think that that's very important, and to show the strong support for Guyana in this situation.
And now that there's news that Guyana has been exporting more oil than Venezuela, nothing to signal that that will make Maduro even angrier, that perhaps he might make a move?
We continue to watch the situation very, very closely, and certainly I think that in terms of what Venezuela will do and Maduro will do to try and stay in power, he'll continue to do those things in order to be able to remain the president there.
Gotcha. There was that little bit of news about a Chinese spy base in Cuba. Have we learned anything about what they've been looking to spy on?
Well, so certainly as we've seen our FBI director and the Five Eye intelligence chief talk about what the PRC has done and the global espionage threat to democracy, and the greatest threat that it has ever been. And so we all have to be mindful of that and believe that something so close to our homeland is trying to do as much as it can to gain information on the United States.
And how are we countering their espionage efforts there?
Well, I think that the activities and things like that the U.S. government has and does to protect the homeland is firmly in place. And so I would leave it at that point as far as we should talk about that. But rest assured that the U.S. government is doing everything to keep that from happening. How
big a threat is it? I mean, you had people say this is kind of like a Cuban Missile Crisis, right, where you had the Chinese, which of course is not even remotely the same, but you know, a spy base. I mean, we know this base has been there for a long time. I mean, is this more of like this is what the Chinese do? Is it an actually massive problem here that they're that close? Or is it something in between? I think, as I've always said, proximity matters. And 90 miles from our homeland, it matters. And so we have to be concerned about that and remain concerned about that. How concerned? Concern. Concern. Yeah. Just in diplomatic speak, concern means not that concerned. Well, I'm not a diplomat. Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Let's talk about space for a moment. We know that the Chinese have a deep space facility in Argentina. There's a new president there. Do you have any indications that he's seeing that as a problem he wants to work with the U.S. on, or is that work going to continue apace? And so I think with the new administration in Argentina and the great relationship, we had a very, very strong mill-to-mill relationship with Argentina with the previous administration in Argentina, and now that has only doubled in terms of positive relationship. And immediately with that administration getting in the seat and the reaching out and the coordination and collaboration that has happened since then,
has been very, very strong. And so we look forward to continuing to double down on efforts with Team USA and Team Argentina. Really, really excited about that.
Are you advising your Argentinian counterparts to shut that facility down?
We work with our Argentine partners. That's a sovereign country, and so as we work with them, obviously we share our concerns with what kind of facility that is, them not having access to it, and a 50-year lease, and being one of 3 deep space stations that China has. That's obviously a huge concern for me as a military person. And the ability for what that station does and does for China against allies and partners. And so we continue to work in collaboration with our Argentine partners on that.
No, I get it's a sovereign nation, but of course, the United States has a position on it, right? And is the position that that facility should continue?
That is for Argentina to decide. On how that facility will remain, if it remains there, and what the way ahead for it is. And so we will let them be the decider, the decision maker in that, as they were originally for that site to even be put in place there.
Let's take a quick step back. What is it about South America for why China wants to set up a lot of deep space facilities there?
Well, I think what's happening in Latin America and the Caribbean is not new. It's not new to the globe, and it's not new to what the PRCs plan to do and their vision and strategy. And so this is just another region where they've moved into after Europe and Africa, and now here into the Hemisphere. And this region has a lot of talk about 10 years ago. This region being able to feed and fuel the world, and so not a lot of talk about that any longer. However, everything is still there for this region to feed and fuel the world. And so China has realized that, and they get a lot of resources from the region. 36% of their food comes from this region. 75% of their copper comes from this region. Rare earth, critical minerals, fresh water, 31% of the world's fresh water. Over 50% of the soybean comes from the region. Over 30% of the sugar and the corn. The trade will double. What has happened over the last 20 years in terms of China's trade with this region has gone from about 12 billion up to about 300 billion, and is expected to double by 2035. So you look at that immense increase in trade as well. And so I think they see the resources that are there, and I think they see the vulnerability, because the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are still digging out of the hole of COVID and the impacts from COVID and the economic impacts that has created. And so they also see a vulnerability there. We see transnational organized crime, transnational criminal organizations, and the insecurity and the instability that has created. And I think that just exacerbates everything, and then also makes countries more vulnerable as they're dealing with those challenges and the insecurity and the instability. The ability to be able to take those resources and extract that out back to China.
I mean, in a sense, it almost feels like there's a mismatch between, we want, of course, democracies and good partners in Latin America, and it almost sounds like, from what you're saying, the Chinese need the region for their own survival, right? Their own minerals and their food. How do we sort of meet the moment when they seem to have sort of an existential need to be good partners in that region?
They do. I think that you want good things to happen for the region, not for predatory loans and things like that have occurred with some of the Belt and Road Initiative. 22 of 31 of the countries in the region are signed onto the Belt and Road Initiative, and so we've seen, not just in this region, but in other regions in the world, what that has done with those loans and tit for tat in terms of, you do this, we'll do this, we'll give you this if you do this, and not recognize Taiwan, but recognize China and Beijing, and those sorts of things. There's always a hook. There's always fine print and things like that. It's nothing that is without strings attached. And that's what I think what Team USA does, is we don't do things for strings attached. We don't have the fine print on things. We do it because we're a like-minded democracy, we're a fellow democracy, and we would like this region to remain free, secure, and prosperous.
Yeah. I have about 5 minutes left, so just get your questions ready. I'll look at them on the iPad in a moment, but I'll keep going in the meantime. Mike Gallagher, Congressman Mike Gallagher, who's leading the China Committee, he wrote last year that for China, the real prize in the Panama Canal is quote-unquote control, because of the natural resources, their telecommunications, and eventually governments. Is that your assessment, that China wants not only just greater control of the Panama Canal, but in fact the most control of any nation outside of Panama?
It makes you have to wonder why all the investment in critical infrastructure, why in deep water ports, in space, in 5G telecommunications. As we heard our FBI director and the Five Eye intelligence chiefs talk about the stealing of data that the PRC is doing. And so as we talk to our partners and as they try to show progress for their people and invest in the latest technology as well, and being eyes wide open in terms of what we already know and sharing all of that in terms of the stealing of data and the data crisis that we're in. And so I think that being eyes wide open about that and being able to work with our partners and share the information that we have so they can make decisions, informed decisions. But I would also say that that Western solutions and U.S. companies have got to compete on these critical infrastructure projects as well. We're not competing as much as we should. And if we're not competing on the tenders that come out from countries for critical infrastructure, then the countries have no choice but to choose, who competed in the first place, right?
Yeah. So it should be taken kind of as a given now that any time a U.S. commercial vessel goes through the Panama Canal, or even a military vessel, there are Chinese eyes all over. There's ability to take data, espionage, get a sense of what's going on there?
There can be. And so with the state-owned enterprises from the PRC that the government controls right along the Panama Canal, that's obviously, that's a huge concern.
And speaking of huge concern, I'm assuming the chance at this point is close to zero, but if trends continue as they are, is there any way that the Chinese would have enough influence over that canal to sort of curb American trade through that port, through that area?
And so as we work with our Panamanian partners on security of the Panama Canal, I have a mission in Southcom to defend the Panama Canal if necessary. And so we work very closely with our Panamanian partners on the threats that are currently there and could possibly be there through decisions that they make in business and those sorts of things towards national security. And I think that as we increase our discussion about that, how economic security is national security, but you can't make decisions just for the dollar or what that gives you and compromise national security. You have to have national security front and center in the decisions that are made.
There's a growing argument, moving on, there's a growing argument in Congress that because of the fentanyl crisis and because so much is coming from Mexico and killing a bunch of Americans at pretty high numbers, I know you're well aware, there's a growing argument that it would make sense to use military force to take out fentanyl labs, drug labs. Is that something that you think would be a useful tack to take?
I think that certainly Mexico is not in the Southcom region. Right. It is in my counterpart Northcom's region. But the thing is that we work with our partners to do exactly that. As I've always said, you can't interdict your way out of a drug crisis. And you've got to follow the money. You've got to follow where the labs are. You've got to work with our partners in terms of the intelligence sharing and the information sharing to enable them to be able to go after those points where it is being produced and created, as opposed to just interdicting. Because you can't do one without the other.
Right. So not even just Mexico, but elsewhere in your region, obviously there's the law enforcement function there. But there's a military function as well? Or at least a place for military?
So military function in terms of detection and monitoring. So I have that mission with my Joint Interagency Task Force South, which is a subordinate command to Southcom. And they have the detection and monitoring mission for illicit drug trafficking coming to the United States by air and maritime. And so we take that detection and monitoring, the information, the intelligence, and we turn that over to law enforcement in order for them to be able to do a disruption or interdiction. Law enforcement or partner nation, depends on who's close. Closer, right? And so our partner nations, the ability to conduct those interdictions and those disruptions has increased. Over 76% of the disruptions are done by partner nations.
Right. And have you seen a curbing in the amount of precursor chemicals that the Chinese promised that they would deliver less to the region? Have you seen that to be true?
So in terms of fentanyl, I'll let my counterpart from Northcom talk about more of with the Mexico and the precursor chemicals and fentanyl into the United States. We see in the region like medical fentanyl is a problem, being stolen from hospitals and things like that. We do not have yet, I say yet because you never say never, and you hope it doesn't come that direction, but you've got to be eyes wide open. That the fentanyl-laced cocaine is really the problem that we have and things like that. So. In terms of the cocaine being the #1 distributed drug coming out of my hemisphere or out of my region.
Right. I want to give you a chance to reflect, and then I'll, as I look through questions. When I talk to experts on the region, one of the things they tell me is, they expect historians 50 years, 100 years from now will look back at this period of American military foreign policy and say, look, we spent so much time in the Middle East, spent so much time focused elsewhere, there was relatively little attention paid to your region. Which they find to be odd, right? Because a lot of what affects us day to day is what happens here. And you've been in Iraq, you've fought in other regions. Just now that you lead Southcom, just wondering if that assessment rings true to you. Has there been sort of a general overall neglect of the region compared to our sort of strategic choices abroad?
I think that we could have done a little bit better. And certainly when there are crises that require our attention in other parts of the world, that's where the focus is. And so we've done really, in terms of working with the Latin American Center here and the Atlantic Council and with partners in the interagency and just increasing awareness that we can't just focus on one or two places. We have got to continue to focus on our partners in the hemisphere that we're part of. Again, it goes back to being good neighbors and how we work with our partners and the trust that we have built over time. And so that work and partnership in terms of reaching out and working closer with our State Department, with our Department of Commerce. I will travel with Secretary Raimondo on Thursday and Friday to Costa Rica, as we will in support of the CHIPS Act and semiconductor supply chain that the U.S. partners with 2 of 7 countries in the region. That's Panama and Costa Rica. Yeah. So excited for that trip as well. Partnership with Treasury, with NASA, right, because of all the space. So how are we, the strategic competition is alive and well in the hemisphere. But if you're going to compete, you got to be on the ground. You got to have your jersey on. You got to have your number. You got to be out there competing. Right, and so it's ginning up all of that. We have all of our instruments of national power from Team USA that are very much alive and well in the region. But harnessing that, synchronizing and integrating it, and bringing it to bear when it needs to come into place. There are opportunities that open up, and opportunities will close. And you only have a short time to respond to those opportunities. And so how do we bring all those instruments of national power to help our partners when they need that help during those times of crisis? I call them opportunities because it's our opportunity to get in there and show what a good partner means and does, and you got to be responsive. Some of our processes in the U.S. government were developed when there wasn't a lot of strategic competition in the region. And so we've done a lot of great work, not we at Southcom, but just working with all of our partners to speed that up. Right. And with leaders that are in the seat of one term of about 4 years on average, they're working on a stopwatch, not a calendar. They need to show progress for their people and for their democracy within months, not years. Yeah. So.
Okay. Let me turn to the audience questions. You'll be shocked to hear that there are a bunch on Haiti, but I will maybe just do one on it because other people have pretty specific questions about the region. Has the Pentagon carried, or I guess or Southcom, carried out any analysis of what will be needed for the Kenyan-led UN mission in Haiti to succeed? Approximately how long do you expect it to take, and how many personnel would be involved? That's from Connor Eccles of Responsible Statecraft.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work in terms of with our State Department for the MSS and for Kenya to lead that multinational force and have so for many months, and Department of Defense in the role of supporting with logistics and sustainment for the MSS, and so that is working and at the speed of relevance. To get the Kenyans to be able to come into Haiti, as we've seen in the news, and with them waiting for the transition council to get in place before the MSS will come. And I know that our State Department is working very aggressively with CARICOM and the other international leaders to get that transition presidential council identified and in place.
How confident are you that that will happen?
I'm very confident it will happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Can General Richardson, this is from Colby Badwar with The Insider, could you speak to any efforts to work with South American countries to provide material support to Ukraine? That includes procuring ammunition and the ring agreement with Ecuador that seemed to fall apart.
Yeah, so we have 9 countries in the region that have Russian equipment, and so the countries, and what the offer is that donate your equipment to Ukraine or to the United States, and we be able to backfill that equipment with U.S. equipment, and obviously with U.S. quality equipment and all that brings with training, spare parts, logistics, the supply chain, and all of that. And so we offer that, and we offer that for countries that, as we know, the sanctions are working, so it's hard to get spare parts for that Russian equipment, and so a lot of that equipment is not functioning. It is not serving a role for the militaries, which they desperately need operational and ready equipment to be able to counter the transnational criminal organizations and the threats that they face. And so we're able to offer that program, and for whatever country wants to be able to swap that equipment out.
There's a general perception, if I may, just pulling off that countries in your AOR aren't so jazzed about providing as much material support to Ukraine. Are you finding that to be generally true, not as true? What do you think about that narrative that has come up in recent year?
Well, I think that countries, they have to decide, and certainly the concerns that they have and the agreements that they have, as they, economics is a big factor in this. And so as they weigh their decision, and what impacts based on economic ties that they have with Russia and those sorts of things, that they have to weigh those decisions that they'll make. Now, certainly our U.S. equipment is much better than that equipment that they have from Russia, and we would like to be able to, for them to have the best, latest technology type equipment to counter the threats that they have. It's interoperability. It's all of those things that come with the U.S. Supply chain and training and those sorts of things. So,
do countries, some of these countries, and I promise I'll go back to this, but do some of these countries say, yes, we would love to have American equipment, but we've got such a relationship with Russia or China that's impossible?
Well, they weigh those decisions. I mean, those are things that they consider depending on the agreements and the contracts that they have currently with the equipment from Russia for the Russian equipment, and so they have to weigh those decisions.
They show generally any inkling in wanting to break those contracts for American contracts?
I think that our U.S. equipment is by far is much better, and so as they weigh those decisions on how they're going to proceed with that, if they do, they have to. Those are decisions that they have to make.
Okay. Maria, no last name, so I'll assume that's my mom, whose name is Maria. Would love the general's thoughts on Nicaragua and Russian influence and penetration there. It affects Costa Rica, a very close ally of the U.S.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba, that nexus, just to have that malign activity, support malign activity in the region, and we would like to get rid of that, obviously mitigate that. And it's no good. It's not good for democracies. We would like all of the countries in the region to be thriving democracies. We see when you don't have a democracy in place what is happening. And you see what's happening with Venezuela. You see what's happening with Nicaragua. And you see what's happening with Cuba right now. And so that malign activity and the sponsoring of high-level leaders to be able to visit that country and come into the region, and it just spurs more malign activity and fosters that negative perception and decreases the ability of democracies and democratic institutions and things like that. They would like nothing better than to replace democracy.
Lucky you, I was just informed that we get to spend another 5 minutes with you since we started a little late. So we'll keep going. From Hal Hodson, what is Southcom doing to support intel sharing between countries like Ecuador, which are facing surging organized crime?
Yeah, so our partners, myself and the Western Hemisphere advisor for President Biden, former Senator Dodd, traveled together to Ecuador shortly after the crisis there, and certainly our U.S. government support to Ecuador and a democracy. And as we saw in President Noboa's interview with Christiane Amanpour, talking about that Ecuador will handle the situation in Ecuador as a democracy and the Ecuador way. And so as we support that democracy, as we have, essentially that is a tough uphill battle in terms of countering that malign activity, and we have doubled down on our operations activities and investments that we're doing with Ecuador. The U.S. government, it's not just U.S. Southcom, but the Department of State, INL, USAID, all of that together in terms of our instruments of national power with Ecuador, the projects that already are alive and well from the Developmental Finance Corporation, many projects into Ecuador, but certainly the safety and security is paramount based on the crisis that happened. And so the actions that Ecuador took to gain back control, categorize or designating those gangs as terrorist organizations and allowing the military to reinforce the police to get control back of that country. But as they wrestle with those hard challenges, insecurity and instability, we have to continue with our economic investment. Our foreign direct investment from the U.S. is just about doubled between 2021 and 2022 into the region. And so how do we bring that to bear in terms of helping with those transnational criminal organizations trying to take control, and how these struggling democracies are trying to counter that?
And just out of curiosity, in a situation that Ecuador just went through, how much do they proactively ask for, U.S. military advice on how to deal with challenges, or how much is given to them by us, perhaps without much asking?
Well, the engagement that we do is constant with our partner, and so we've ensured that we have consistent engagement with Ecuador, not just from U.S. Southcom and our Department of Defense, but also from State Department and also from USAID, and the continued travel and visits and reinforcing their efforts. And so certainly I did a donation of equipment while I was there. We had a donation that followed with actually it was Humvee parts that Ecuador had already on track to deliver, but we sped up that delivery. We have a C-130 that is making its way and will be donated as soon as it arrives in a couple of weeks to Ecuador as well. Our operations that we do with my Joint Interagency Task Force South, JIATF South, and the partnership with Ecuador and other countries as we counter the malign activity from the drug transshipments that happen in that area around and close by the Galapagos. So it's consistent partnership and engagement that we do with our partners and with Ecuador.
Excellent. I'm sorry if I get this name wrong. Luis Fabricio Vergueiro from Brazil, so it's a global audience. Asking you about your perspectives on fostering the Women, Peace, and Security UN Security Council agenda at the Western Hemisphere and your experience with it.
Well, I think that the Women, Peace, and Security, really proud of the efforts that the militaries and public security forces have made. And certainly I've taken the opportunity to make that part of every visit that I do to every country. We will do a Women, Peace, and Security event. I have my Sergeant Major for Southcom, Sergeant Major Rodriguez, that's in the audience today. He runs the Senior Enlisted Leader Professional Development Program that is also a Rockstar program in Southcom and in the region. And what we find is there are a lot of very talented women senior enlisted leaders as well. And so all of this just dovetails nicely and segues nicely into the integration of women into the forces, the increasing of readiness, the increasing of healthy competition. But it doesn't take long for our partners. It's really a power of example, right? Sometimes, as our young people have told me that I've listened to, is our young people are very perceptive in terms of you can't be what you can't see. And so just the power of example and the power of leadership and what that brings, and to see our countries that are doing that integration and how they have done it over just the milestones that they've surpassed in just a couple of years. And so I think they'll continue to do that. But again, it's the power of partnership and the power of leadership that we show.
Very briefly, just because about 5 of these kinds of questions came in a row, given the growing presence of Russia and China in the region, do you anticipate continued relevance for the Hemispheric Defense Collective System outlined in the 1947 Rio Treaty? This treaty allows for collective action against any threat to regional security. Is it beneficial for the United States?
I think that the partnerships of democracies working together for the benefit of the good, I think that partners absolutely have got to, with all of the challenges, there's not one country that's being spared from all of the challenges from the transnational criminal organizations. Not one. Illegal mining, illegal logging, illegal fishing, counterfeit goods, drugs, trafficking of people. They're all experiencing some form of that, all of them. And the better that we can all work together, not just internally inside countries, but cross-border, and agreements and engagements and partnerships and that we make and that we do, doubling down on our efforts to commit to working better together to counter those activities. And I've seen Colombia and Ecuador do that on their Colombia's southern border, and obviously Ecuador's northern border. But those relationships, as we bring our conferences together, we have 3 regional annual conferences in Southcom that we hold, and we're getting ready to do our Central American Security Conference in Guatemala in April. And so that will bring all the Central American countries together, and we talk about that commitment that we make, but we just don't talk about things. We talk about and make things happen in terms of deliverables. But working cross-border and together holistically to counter these challenges is what it's going to take.
I'm being told to wrap, but I've got one last very important question for you, and it's the hardest one. When you're traveling in the region, where do you get the best meal and where do you get the best drink?
Every single country has a best meal and a best drink, I will tell you, and I haven't been disappointed yet. It's amazing.
See, you are a diplomat. Thank you all for coming in a post-COVID world. Thank you to the Atlantic Council for hosting, and thank you, General, for doing this.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Alex.
it. Have a good one.
Very
Thanks for watching AC
much.
Front Page.
Thank you.